Welcome to technical session number 39. Getting up there. We're going to be talking about some alternate operating systems. We have spent a great deal of time talking about Windows throughout this cohort, and we will still talk a lot about Windows, but we do need to spend some time with the other operating systems because people at our organizations, customers, whatnot, may be using some of these. And let's face it, if you can be proficient at Linux, you become significantly more valuable to a team because a lot of servers and cybersecurity tools and stuff like that operate in the Linux arena. Right. So our objectives for this particular course are going to be to explain the purpose and context for knowing how to navigate some other operating systems, including Mac OS, Linux, and then we'll briefly touch on some mobile operating systems, but we have a whole technical session for that later. Yes, Crystal.
So operating, I understand what the operating system is. Is Oracle software or is it an operating system?
Oracle is a software company.
Okay, thank you.
That provides a lot of different types of software.
Right. Okay. So what we're looking at as far as operating systems are called, we're concerned. We've got Windows, Linux, and Mac, and that's it.
Well, there's Chrome OS too.
Oh, Chrome, and then Ubuntu.
That is a Linux distribution.
Oh, okay.
So
thank you.
Ubuntu is Linux. It is
right.
Linux operates on what are called distros or distributions, but we'll talk about that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so after this, we're going to be comparing and contrasting some of the features and functions of the Mac operating system and the Linux operating systems as well. And some of you may be thinking, well, good grief, I only have Windows. How will I ever get practice on some of these other operating systems? You know, I don't want to install a virtual machine, and I really need to know this stuff. Well, you're in luck.
Labs.
We have labs, and some of you will lovingly enjoy the labs in test out, and some of you will want to rage quit really quick when you start playing around with Linux in Coursera. But again, being proficient is really good to help you out, especially going forward in the help desk arena. All right, operating systems. As of 2019, this was kind of a breakdown as to how they operate. And it looks like there might be some even distribution when you start realizing, unfortunately, all of it's Windows. So it's like 85% of it is Windows. And then you have, I don't know, 9%, which is Mac, and then 2%, which is Linux, and then they have others. Although I would say Chrome now has taken up a much larger portion of this pie, as it is being more and more adopted with the Chromebooks and stuff. So they are a pretty good entry-level system to get started on. All right. So other operating systems, which we're going to be talking about for the most part, we're going to be dealing with Linux and Mac. Those are going to be our main ones, and just kind of have some basic understanding what they work, you know, what they may look like, how we navigate, fun stuff like that. They all tend to contain, you know, they tend to have common features, but just may be used a little differently. The command line that you would use in Linux is very, very similar to what you would use in Mac. And then there are just some slight changes for the command line in Windows, although there is some kind of unification going on with that, but they're kind of starting to use similar terms across the board. But they're not quite there yet, but we're just seeing movements in that way, in that direction. So first off, let's look at Linux and the infamous Ubuntu. So as we mentioned a little bit earlier, Linux operates in what are called distributions or distros. Here are some of the more popular ones. Ubuntu tends to be a favorite, although for entry level, Mint is a really good one as well. But some of these others depending on what you're trying to do, what you're using them for, may be better. Linux is what you would call an open source operating system, meaning it's free. And you may just have to pay for support. Now, if you are working for a company and you don't want to pay tens of thousands of dollars for licenses, you can opt to use Linux. However, your IT staff is going to need to be much higher trained in order to navigate the Linux system and be able to set them up properly and all that kind of fun stuff and service them. So there is a little bit of trade-off in that. And then if you start getting into things like cybersecurity, then you'll be looking at other versions of Linux like Kali or Black Arch, which have a huge amount of cybersecurity tools that you can use and practice with and fun stuff like that, and also free. So if you're getting into those types of markets, if cybersecurity is a avenue you're thinking about pursuing, Kali Linux may be something you might want to start looking into and getting some practice in. All right, Mac OS. They started out with cats, slowly working their way down. And I guess each cat that they chose got bigger, 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 bigger until they ran out of cats. And then they went with, what was it, mountain ranges. And I think now we're on national parks. Sometimes that can make it hard to determine where you're at if you're not familiar with their naming system. But if you look it up, it'll also tell you a number. That'll give you the service pack and operating system number you're on. All right. So other operating system maintenance things we're going to be talking about briefly: scheduled backups, disk maintenance, updates, the App Store, with regards to Apple, patch management, driver and firmware updates, things like that. A lot of this stuff operates pretty similarly to Windows. There's just kind of some slight differences, and certain things go by different names, as well as antivirus and anti-malware. So on Mac OS, it's really easy. They have a little desktop app that's basically, it's on your dock first thing when you start up, called Time Machine. You can use the rsync tool, which is what you would typically use in Linux, but Time Machine pretty much takes care of it for you. It is much easier and more user-friendly than utilizing that utility as well. You have to enable it the first time you use it, and then you can set it up to run backups automatically for you, and it can be hour, daily, weekly, however you want to do it. The only thing is it would need to boot to a different drive to perform an operation on the drive in question. So like you would need to have another external or an external drive to Time Machine 2. You couldn't do it on the same system, because if your drive crashes, your backup's going to be lost as well. Now, the rsync function in Linux, it can be done locally or remotely, which is kind of nice. It is a command line function, and you can create batch files, and you can schedule these backups as you see fit. And the tar and Scipio command line utilities are also used to construct full or partial backups. So you would use those in conjunction with the rsync command line. Do you need to know all these Linux command lines? You need to have a basic understanding of a batch of them. Do you need to be an expert at Linux command line? No, you do not. But you should be able to spot in a multi-select scenario, oh, that's a Linux command. Or when they give you a Linux command or they ask you if you want to do something in Linux, this is the basic command you're going to want to know. Yes, for instance, exactly. Su or sudo are two ones that they ask about a lot. And the difference between PASSWD and PWD, because they will always put those in as answers. But we will get to those here very shortly. All right, disk maintenance. Similar to the old APFS or Apple file system, you do not need disk defragmentation on a Mac, and this is based on how they insert programs is a little different than the way Windows does. So it doesn't require disk defragmentation. However, you do want to go in and check the disk's health, the utility, to make sure that you're not getting bad sectors on your drive or things like that. And the disk utilities can verify the health of it, and you don't have to necessarily boot to the different drives in order to do this. Now, Linux OS, it is a command line function, which is FSCK, which is File System Checker, and it'll run a scan on your drive, make sure everything is as it should be, and check the health of your drive as well. That one you do need to know. FSCK, File System Checker. So Linux and Mac OS, again, because of the way their file systems are set up, they kind of defragment on the fly as they're inserting new files. And they tend to bring them in line by line rather than in a packet format. So. All right. System updates. You will get a chance to practice system updates in Linux if you have not already. I don't know. Have you guys done the system update in Linux yet with Linux? Yes, or you have to use the apt-get.
Yes.
All that. Okay. So in Ubuntu and Fedora, they allow what's called a GUI tool, which is like you would operate normally in Windows, which is the graphic user interface where you would click on the icons, go into that tool, and then it would allow you to run system updates. If you're not in Ubuntu or Fedora, if you're using something like Kali or a basic Linux command line like you do when you're using it in Coursera or Test Out, you actually would need to put in the command lines for the updates, but we'll get into again, where you would have to use the sudo command, which is super user do once, which allows you essentially to operate as an administrator in the Linux command line, and then you use apt-get to run the updates. And then to install them, you would use the sudo super user do once, apt-get upgrade. Coursera has a great lab on this. It's one of the few times you'll hear me complimenting it, but their Linux labs are pretty good. So I encourage you to pay attention when you do those, and they'll walk you through upgrading, downloading applications from the internet, all that kind of fun stuff. All right, Apple Store provides updates directly. And you can apply them automatically if you wish through the software update preferences. And you can set it to check daily, monthly, or weekly as you see fit. But thankfully, one of the good things about Apple is they're not like Windows, where Windows sends out like 20 updates a day. Apple, it's usually you get, a couple times a month, typically. All right, patch management, driver firmware information. So some of these use the same as Windows. You have the System Center Configuration Manager, which is nice. They do have some third-party tools where you can manage this as well. I'm trying to remember the name of the patch management tool my buddy had, which was really good. If I think about it, I'll let you know. He kept it on a USB drive and literally could plug it into a system and it would update all the drivers on there. He had like all the most common drivers downloaded on it, and worked really well. Driver firmware updates in Apple, you update them directly from the Apple support site in the App Store. So you can go to the App Store and then you can click on your account. It would show you what updates you need to do. You click on the updates and you can either do them individually or run them all at the same time. It'll let you know whatever updates you need to run based off your driver, your firmware, and all that kind of fun stuff. Linux, a little more involved. So during and after installation, you can go to the Software Update Center. You can use the Personal Package Archive, or PPA, which contains basically all of your drivers in there. And then you can update this through the RPM package. Again, this may sound like a ton of stuff, but it's not as complicated as we make it out to be. And you have Linux labs that are going to run you through a lot of this stuff in Coursera. Coursera is pretty Linux heavy. They usually try to run you through doing an operation in Windows, and then Linux, they'll run you through that exact same operation, and then they ignore Mac entirely for some reason.
Because Apple ignores
It's the
them.
competition.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Apple ignores them?
Yeah, for facts.
As they should. All right.
Should they?
Yeah.
Apple ignores everyone.
Yeah, that's true. That's only because they're upset they've lost their innovative edge. Now they're just following everybody.
Yeah. Well, Steve Jobs died.
Yeah, good point.
He was the one going out and spending all these billions of dollars on getting talent. Now they're just trying to keep up.
Yeah. Now they're chasing all the new trends rather than setting them.
Exactly.
All right. So antivirus and anti-malware updates. Almost all versions of the malware and antivirus programs, they tend to operate very, very similarly to Windows. Most of your major anti-malware programs will have versions for both because Mac has finally reached a high enough percentage where people actually want to pay attention to it. Beforehand, there was that, forever they said, oh, Macs are immune to viruses, Macs are immune to viruses. And that wasn't even remotely true. But what it was 98% of all computers out there were Windows machines, and 1.5% were Mac. If you're spending the time creating a program to develop a virus to go after, either just to disrupt systems or for financial gain, are you going to fish in the pond that has 98% of the total systems, or are you going to fish in the pond that only has 2? So the whole reason it was believed that Mac was immune was because there wasn't enough of a percentage of the market to be worthwhile to attack. That's changing, now because they're hitting around 10% or so. Now it's getting a little more worthwhile to start going after these machines.
Well,
Is that a question?
I was gonna say, for the people creating the virus, wouldn't it be easier to do it on the Mac, since they wouldn't know how to combat most of what you're making?
So yes, you're correct. But the thing is if you're doing it with ransomware and you're trying to gain control of systems in order to be able to get a payout out of it, again, are you going to fish in the pond with 98% of the fish, or are you going to go after the 2%? There's a much higher likelihood and a much higher volume you could get out of the Windows pool than you could out of the Mac. And again, the tides are changing on that because you're now starting to see viruses come out on Macs a lot. But 5-10 years ago, not the case. So there wasn't enough incentive for them to come after it. All right. So continuing on, we'll talk a little bit more. Backup, time machine, look a little bit more at that. Restore points or snapshots, image recovery, disk maintenance, shell terminal, screen sharing, all that fun stuff, force quit. So we talked about this before in Linux. They do have tools for all versions, but using the tar Scipio command line utilities, you can construct full or partial. They have a lot of options that you can use with those commands. Do you need to memorize all this stuff? No, you do not. This is just to kind of give you an idea as to some of the options you can utilize in the Linux community. Now, if you want to continue on and get a Linux Plus certification, yes, you will need to know this stuff. For the purposes of A+, you need to have an understanding of basic commands with Linux. And the work you get in Coursera will really give you a pretty good understanding of it, though you won't have practice with all the command lines. You'll get a pretty good variety. All right, Mac time machine looks like a little clock with a, go back arrow on it. So you would have to go into it the first time and turn it on, and then you could set up your schedule, what disk you want to back it up to, all that fun stuff. And after it's done, it'll take care of everything for you at that point. So pretty straightforward. Any questions on this so far? So for backups with Linux, understand for the most part it is done in the command line. In Mac, you use the time machine. All right, restore point or snapshot. So snapshot provides a volume image of a device at a particular instant without causing a service interruption. And then you can restore from that point. Now, when they say a snapshot, they're not talking about every single file you have on your machine. They're talking about your operating system files and settings. Where those files are located, it can take a snapshot at a particular point in time, how all your settings are set, and then it stores that image. So if you have a situation where you've deleted files, a volume image like this will not help you. That's a totally different type of backup, but we will talk about that. So to restore from a snapshot, you use the command IV convert command. And then you can go back and select which snapshot you're wishing to use, because you may have multiple in place. Mac, you do this through the GUI time machine application, and it walks you through the process. And you can go back to a particular point in time or do a full restore if you need to. Questions? Any Linux converts out there?
I actually, just because you said more companies want the Linux, I'm actually considering putting that on my PC now and kind of mess around with it.
Well, wonderfully, with like Windows 10 and 11 now have a way where you can put Linux on there and run it on top of Windows, so it's much more user friendly. Like instead of creating a dual boot system, you can literally just run Linux right on top of Windows without creating a virtual machine.
Yeah, I was gonna do that first option, but thank you for actually telling me that, because that'd make it a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, you can do a dual boot if you want, but you can do that. So they do have it. My mentor, Diego, the one who I taught under when I first started, he was practically giddy when they added that update, and he can now run Kali on top of his Linux. He was so excited. So, all right, we have an Ubuntu user out there. Nice. All right. All right, both systems can recover your images using similar techniques if you wish. For Linux OS, you can use the rsync utility to restore an entire snapshot if you wish. And then Mac, you can do this through the disk utility. So disk utility in Mac is very similar to the Windows disk utility. And you can run system recovery through that if you wish. So I think both Windows 10 and 11 offer the Linux. Can't remember the exact acronym they use for it. I'll find it and I'll let you guys know. All right, disk maintenance tools. Take a screenshot of this just to kind of keep it fresh in your mind. Both systems can recover images, but they may use different tools or names for these tools in the process. You have rsync, which backs up and stores files, which can be both used on both Linux and Mac. Time Machine, which is just Mac, and that is a full backup and restore files and images, not just images. You have File System Checker, which basically checks the health of your files, make sure they're not corrupted, make sure they're not on damaged sectors, all that funny stuff, all that fun stuff. Disk Utilities verifies the disk health and restores images if you need it. And then you have tar, which backs up files, and IV Create, which creates a snapshot volume. If any of you are considering getting into digital forensics, I think, who was it that was in, had the degree or was pursuing the degree in criminal justice before?
That's me.
There you go.
Yeah,
Linux
yeah.
is your buddy.
Oh, for real? Okay.
Yes, Linux is your buddy for digital forensics, because it can do basically a forensic copy of a drive with a simple command, which is DD, which is duplicate drive, and that's how they create forensic copies of hard drives. And then after that, you would do something called take something called hashing algorithm, which we'll talk about when we get into security. But that basically lets you know if the drive has ever been tampered with.
Does that apply to all Linux types or just certain ones?
I think mostly they deal with Kali because that's where all the security tools are. So it'd be Kali and Black Arch will be your ones I would look into. Black Arch is a little more unstable, is the best
Kali,
word I can
okay.
use for it. Kali is a little more tried and tested. But like I know a couple people were trying to get into Black Arch because it had more bells and whistles, like some more interesting tools, but they could never get it to stabilize enough to be able to use properly.
Is Black Arch something you have to pay for? Is that
No,
why?
no, it's a free distro as well. But again,
Then-
you have to be able to get it stable enough to where it works. So some systems it likes, some systems it doesn't.
Okay, so it's just unstable or unpredictable. Okay.
And that was like a year and a half ago. That may be totally different now.
Okay.
So, but Kali is typically your standard for the industry. Hank, I would say it depends on what you're going into if you want to pursue a Linux Plus certification. So I would look into where your interests are kind of guiding you and then determine from there if Linux is a key component of that. All right. Shell or terminal. We mentioned yesterday, Rachel talked about the shell. In both Mac and Linux, this is your command line interface, or CLI. In Linux, you typically already have access to it. And I believe the most common one they use is called bash. That's the way to interact with the kernel. So Ubuntu, Mint, Kali, a lot of them, they use bash, so it's pretty universal across the board with regards to that. The CLI is kind of the interpreter for it. You'll get plenty of practice in it, but it's easy to get to. To get to it in Mac OS, you need to go to your Finder, which is like this little magnifying glass. It's in the upper right-hand side of the screen. You click on that little magnifying glass, which is like your search function. Same thing you have in Windows, but in Windows, it's in the bottom left. So you click on that search and then you would type in terminal. Or you could go to the applications finder, which is that little Mac icon where you have the blue and white face kind of blended together. And then you would go to devices, applications, utilities, and then terminal. That's your path. I find it easier just to click the search or the search function and just type in terminal, and it takes me right there. So not, and again, all you should be looking for in this particular one is just an overview. This is just kind of an introduction. If there are specific things that you need to remember, I will point it out. Right now, we're just kind of introducing you to the world of these other operating systems. All right, screen sharing. The main takeaway from this particular screenshot, Linux makes it a pain to screen share. Mac OS is relatively easy. So, do you need to know how to do all that? No, you really don't. So again, I'm not going to torture you by going through all of this. It's a lot easier to do screen share with a Mac than it is with a Linux. Linux, there's a lot of steps involved. Any questions on that?
I appreciate you not wasting our time.
All right. Here we go. Force quit. This one is an extremely important one. You will get a lot of questions on this. So in Linux, it's basically the kill command. Pretty easy to remember, right? But each program that you have running uses what's called a PID number, which is a process identifier. And they will have a specific number it will give you. Like for this one, they're talking about 4901, which down here is this particular program. So the PID number will lets you isolate a specific instance and be able to shut it down. So if you're opening, like for an example, like in Windows, we'll say like you have 30 instances of Google Chrome open and you have 80 tabs in there. You don't want to close out all your tabs, but only one of them is freezing up. So you can go to your task manager, you can figure out which one's frozen, get the PID number, which is this number we're talking about here. And then you can go and kill just that instance without killing everything else. So that's where
Wow.
the PID will help you.
I wish this was
Yes.
made common knowledge. All right. I've stressed
Well,
so many times when a whole part of it was like starting to freeze up and all the other tabs are okay. And I'm like, great, what do I do?
Well, that's why we're here, right? But yeah, you can go in and just kill a specific instance. And then for Linux, the command line is just kill. So you do kill, space, and then you type in your PID number, and then it will kill that particular process that's running. Yes, Nassim.
Yeah, I just want to say that in Windows, you achieve that by using the task manager and ending a task. As simple as that, I think.
What was that again, Nassim?
I'm sorry. I said that in Windows, you go in task manager and you end the task in order to finish a process that you don't need, or it was freezing or it's froze.
Yes, you can do that in task manager, but here's the thing. In task manager, it's going to kill the whole thing. So it would kill all your Chromes. In PI, with a kill, like a task kill PID, you can kill a specific instance of Chrome. But yes, you are correct. So you can go to task manager and kill it that way. So just think of it as using the command line and the PID numbers is a much more targeted way to end a process rather than using task manager or something like that. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah. Oh, this topic goes to the one that I was working on Coursera, and they were saying that you can look at what people are doing and then you can kill the task. So I'm asking, is that not too invasive? Because they say if you are the system administrator, so you can see what the other people are doing, and then you can go there like visually and then kill the task. Is that allowed? You know what I mean? Is that not too invasive? I'm just
Well, I mean,
saying.
typically as an administrator, you're not going to be going in and spying on what they're doing unless there is something specific, and then, you know, you got other issues going on. Typically, if the administrator is going in and killing a process remotely, it's because something is frozen up and they have contacted you saying, I have a problem.
But they all give them pages. I'm saying, so you're not supposed to give your password, but you know already what you're doing on your desktop.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if I'm confused. I don't get it.
No, you do not give them your password, because then they can act as you. So if an
Mm.
administrator, if somebody has your password, they can act and do things as if they're you. So if they do something that is, you know, illegal, it would be on your logs that you did it. Now, if an administrator can come in as an administrator and do a lot of things, but it would be under the administrator's logs. So it's a little different. So Francis, I
So they know
believe
what
you
you're
have,
doing.
wait, I'm sorry, go ahead, Cynthia.
No, sorry, I'm just trying to. So they know what you work in the office at work, right? Really know what you're doing. They just cannot access with password, but already know what you're doing.
I mean, with that, I'm going to say it depends. You know, they may not be monitoring every single thing you're doing, because a lot of times they may not have the bandwidth or the software to do it or the authorization to do it. Because they don't want IT to have access to sensitive materials. So it depends. Francis, I think you had some insight on this. Is that why you're raising your hand?
I
Yes,
don't know
so
what happened
one of those
to my screen
samples,
when, like, I'm sorry, I got disconnected. It's like something came up and then I was on and off. So I guess, Kelly, you're doing that behind. Did you access my screen and turn
No.
me off?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, it was off for like a minute and then I just came back. But thank you. I will just listen on my way to school.
No problem. What were you saying, Francis?
so one of the real life examples would be from a server point. I have a shared file system, so I can see like who has what Word document open. Maybe they left for the day and someone else needs to work on that document. Since it's a shared document, it wouldn't necessarily open in an editable form. So I can kill that specific document and allow the user to, the new user who's, say, a secretary that needs to then finish the document to access it.
Okay, excellent example. I like that one. Because we had some like stuff similar to that, like with AS400 that I mentioned. It was a logistics program. Only one person could be in a load at a time, and if that person like logged into that load order and went to lunch, nobody else could access it. So we would have to get an administrator to kick them out in order to be able to get in and have access. So if you have something where only one person can have editing privileges at a time, you would, and they left for the day, that could either cause major problems or you have to have an administrator help out. All right, excellent.
Thanks, Francis. I was just worried, like, okay, so they know what I'm doing. Okay.
All right, some Mac OS features. Windows now allows this, but before Mac would allow you to create multiple desktops. So literally I can create a desktop for work, and then I can create one for personal use. And I could keep all my work stuff on one and all my personal stuff on the other and switch between the two as I need to. So wonderful feature, and you can have multiple desktops running at any given time. They have something that's called mission control, which is a quick way for you to kind of just look and see everything that is open. So let me see if I can do that real quick. Just kind of stop share real quick. Then I'll share my main desktop real fast. So if you're looking at the main desktop, I can get off of here. go like this, and it allows me to see everything that I've got open at one time. I can select any given thing, you know, like our fun class schedule right here, and then zoom in. So if I have multiple things open, it allows me to kind of select between them really quick, and they call that mission control. So it's just on a touchpad or whatever, it's 3 fingers on the touchpad, and you swipe upwards, and it just zooms everything out so you can see everything that's open and then find what you need really quickly. So that is one of the features of it, and why they call it mission control, I have no idea. But that's one of the big ones.
Because you're a scientist working in NASA, you need to have the entire picture laid out before you to make those.
Oh, I just wish I had the paycheck. Any case, other things they have for Mac, they have a password management system that's already built in. It's called Keychain, and that'll allow you to share passwords from your phone and from your computer, or what have you. So you can keep all those secured in one place. Spotlight, which is the search tool, that's that little magnifying glass that's up in the corner. We'll get a screenshot of the desktop real quick and I'll be able to show you that. iCloud is the cloud service for Apple. You know, Google has Google Drive. Does anybody remember what Microsoft's is? Does anybody care?
I do.
You do? Okay, I'm glad.
You guys should too, because as CUNY students, you get it for free. It's called OneDrive.
There you go, OneDrive.
Yeah, I think you get a sizable amount, so it's actually pretty good for a whole year after the cohort.
Nice.
Yeah, do not sleep on the benefits you get from your CUNY email address.
Yes, exactly.
I'm still waiting on that.
You should have received an email. She
No,
sent out, so
I
check
I
your,
never even got the email at all.
check
And she
your.
basically just
I
sent an
did.
email saying it's on its way. It's going to be sometime this week, but
Oh, okay.
tomorrow it's going to be like the end of the week kind of thing.
Okay.
So if
that's
it's
like-
not in
I-
by tomorrow.
Kayla's like, I need my student discounts.
I know, right? I think the
Yeah,
only person they weren't able to get in touch with or get an email to was Francis. They keep getting kicked back on your email. So I don't know if they're
Oh.
getting caught in your spam filters or whatnot.
I don't think so because
No, no,
No,
Francis,
that's
not-
because I
not
use
Casey.
a
Oh, Francis. Oh, okay.
yeah. That's because I use a different mail server. Let's just say.
Oh. Now I want to know, but maybe that's too much information. Anyways, yeah, because I'll have you guys know, I was considering buying you know, a grounding bracelet and the mat, because like my computer's like super dusty right now.
There you go. That's
But
funny.
I don't have Amazon because I'm not paying for Jeff Bezos.
Okay. I mean, you don't have to go
Wait.
through them. Then there's other places you can go.
You don't have Amazon what? Prime?
Yeah, I don't have Prime. But I mean,
That's
I kind of
crazy.
I don't want to use Amazon anymore. Like I actually it's harder, but I'm thinking about just looking at local areas because that
There you go.
will support
I'm-
local businesses too. you know.
I encourage that highly.
I'm all for that until they're charging you like $60 or something you get for $20.
Yeah.
So it gets to a point where, yeah, I want to support you, but if you can't compete, then you can't compete.
Conversation for another time. We'll continue on this one real quick. But other things for the desktop that you'll need to know. Okay, so we talked about Spotlight, that's the search function, iCloud. You have gestures, which Mac was kind of on the forefront of this. So you can like pinch your screen to zoom in, and you do different gestures with your hands, like you do 2 fingers on the mouse pad, scroll up and down. You can, it allows you to scroll. If you do 2 fingers side to side, it lets you scroll side to side. 3 fingers up takes you to mission control. No, you don't need to know all that stuff. It's just, you know, just examples of things that you can do with gestures on a touchpad in order to gain functionality in your system. All right, Finder. This is like Mac's version of File Explorer, where you can kind of go in and drill down into various things and look for different files, folders, disks, applications, You can look into your library and say, like, I'm going to look at all my music, and it'll pull up all your music in one folder, or all my videos, and it'll pull up all your videos in one folder, or documents, or whatnot. So that would be all found in the Finder. Now, the next one's kind of a weird one. It doesn't much make sense now, but like 10 years ago, it did. So they have a thing called remote disk, and it allows you to access the optical drive of another system. So if you were downloading an operating system to multiple machines, you could literally put it in one machine and then use a remote disk to go in and grab the files off of the optical drive of each one of those. Or if everybody was sharing files off of a DVD-ROM, then you could just put it in one machine and everybody could share the files off of it. It would allow everyone to have, it would allow people to have remote access to the optical drive in another Mac. And then the dock, that's essentially the taskbar at the bottom of your screen. They call it the dock. As opposed in Windows, it's the taskbar. On Mac, it's the dock. So it's just that little tab in the bottom that has all your icons in it. And then I don't think they're still using it anymore, but Mac had a multi-boot program called Boot Camp. And that would allow you to select the operating system you wanted to use. Like if you wanted to have Linux on your Mac, and upon boot, you can select, yeah, I want the Mac OS, or I want to run Linux, or if I wanted to run Windows or whatnot. So may see questions on that one. Questions so far? Again, just a reminder, this is just an introduction. I'm not expecting 100% retention on this.
Well, if you must know, Kelly, when you say exam, my ears perk up. And then you tell us, and then
That's
you tell
tomorrow,
us
not
that
today.
it's an introduction. So you're giving me mixed signals here.
So, but that's tomorrow. Don't worry about that. You know, we're talking today. Live in the present. All right. So I would take a screenshot of this slide, which gives you basic Linux commands. These are ones they would highly likely ask you about. So your CD for change your current directory, your chmod, which means change, modify file permissions, chown, which you would change the owner of the file and or group, copying files, ls, which is displays your current directory, or display contents of a directory, sorry. mkdir, creating a directory, so make directory. mv is your move, so you rename a file and move it to another area. rm is remove, that's a delete file. And then here's the big one. I guarantee you will see a question on this, and it trips up a lot of people. PWD stands for print working directory. So it displays the current directory that you are in at the moment. Where people become confused with it is, let me get to it real quick. Right here. To change the current password is PASSWD. So they'll ask you, what is the command to change a password in Linux? And they're going to give you that PASSWD, and they're going to give you PWD. And a lot of people will go to the PWD because it's short for password, right? But no, it's print working directory. Commit these to memory. PASSWD and PWD. I guarantee you will see a question on it.
Honestly, though, I kind of feel like I would have picked the other one anyways, because it literally has pass on it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
like,
but you may
okay.
you may have thought, but you may think it's a Microsoft version of it, because they're going to give you some Microsoft commands too. So.
Oh my god. You know,
Yeah,
these people make
they
it
mix up.
difficult.
They do mix up the Linux and the Microsoft command lines to try to trick you. And you usually get like two of each. So you get like two Microsoft, two Linux, and at least be able to get yourself down to 50-50 to give yourself better odds if you can't remember right off the top of your head.
When I hear this, where they want to trick us, it means they want our money. Like,
Well, I
that's where
mean,
it comes down to. All right.
They're not in business for the kindness of their hearts. I mean, they're there to make a living. And the test has to be hard enough that people who see you have that certification will say, yep, they know their stuff. All right, here's another one for you to get a good screenshot of. You got your DD, which is the one we talked about for making forensic copies, which is duplicate drive. You can copy blocks of data from one to another. You can do it as specific directories or entire drives. Term grep is to search for regular expressions in a text file. apt-get, we talked about earlier. Download files from a repository site. PS, which displays a list of the running processes that you have currently. So this is where you would kind of go to look and see, like if your system is hanging up, where you would get that PID number. This is the command you would use, the PS, to display your current running processes, and it'll tell you, are the processes running? Are they disabled? Are they, waiting? So if you have a process that has been waiting for a long period of time, it may be hung up, and you might need to shut that one down. And then there's the shutdown command, which is not shut down a process, that is to shut down your entire computer. And then VI is to start the visual file editor. So that's how you would edit a text file. All right, here's the other ones we talked about. So there's pass WD, which we already talked about. And then we briefly talked about sudo, which is super user do once. And it allows you to run a single command as an administrator. And then you have SU, which allows you to start a new shell as another user. And the other user is assumed to be the administrator or the root user. So that is super user. So when you go into that, you're typically the administrator and you can run a whole bunch of commands. If you don't want to do that, you use sudo or sudo, however you want to pronounce it. And that allows you to have administrative level access for one command. So when you run that command, then it turns on administrative access, then turns it back off. All right. Now, here are some other things, like this is dealing a lot with file permissions. You will deal with this a little bit later. There's two different ways you can put it in. You have read, write, execute, which is the permission level, or you can use what are called numbers. You can, because you have to set permissions for the user, which is you, for the group that you're involved in, and others. So you may see it put in where for yourself, you may have RWE or RWX, excuse me, read, write, execute, and that is for the user. Then they'll have a comma, and then you would have, for your group, read and write capabilities, but not execute. And then for everybody else, they'd be able to read, but not write or execute to the files. So you have three sets of permissions that you would have to put in. We will talk about this again a little bit later, and you may see it like this, or they may actually use a binary numbering system 1 through 7, because if you have 3 bits, you have 8 total positions you can use, or 8 total possibilities, but 0 takes up a place. So then you would use numbers from 0 to 7. So if you want everybody to have read, write, execute, it would just be 7, 7, 7. Again, this is something we'll talk about again later, and we'll show more examples of it, and you will get practice on this in Coursera and Linux. So this is just if you have a file or a document, say if you're creating a script for a new program or whatever. And since you're the person creating it, you want to be able to read what's there. You want to be able to write to it and edit it. And you want to be able to run that program. So you want to be able to execute from it. You know, say you wanted it, like you're writing a script for it to do, you know, disk maintenance every Friday. You know, so while you're writing it, you have it there. And then your other members of your group, you want them to be able to read what you've done and write to it in case they have ideas, but you don't want them to go ahead and run the program because maybe it requires more authority. And then everybody else may just be able to just read the script, but they won't be able to edit it or run the program. So that's what they mean by read, write, execute. And this is the two different ways that you can represent that. But again, we will talk about this again. This is just a quick, brief overview of it. Questions so far?
Yes, Kelly, and I've seen a lot of questions with regards to IP config and IF config, with the IP using Windows and then the IF using Mac or Unix.
Linux, yep.
Yeah, they always bring those questions. I saw it several times.
Although
And it's
they
very
are converting over to, we haven't got really into the command line on that yet, but we will. But they are converting the Linux back over to the IP config.
Oh.
So you're starting to see that happen just because it was confusing people.
Yep,
but yeah, you are correct. So if you wanted to get your network configurations in a Windows computer, you type IP config. And then if it's Mac or Linux, it's IF config. So Igloo Frank as opposed to Igloo Papa. But when we get to networking and TCP/IP, we will talk about that. But good preview.
Thanks.
Yes, Nassim.
Yeah, I want to say that in Windows, we have the same function in Windows under the tab security, and then you have the permissions, different permissions you can give.
Correct. Yeah, Windows for almost all command line stuff, they have a GUI representation that you can work through as well. So, you are absolutely correct, Nassim. All right. Well, it wouldn't be a session without a quiz. Wrap things up here. We should now be able to explain the purpose and context for knowing how to navigate other operating systems, including Mac OS and Linux. Mobile operating systems we will get into, I think, Monday. And then compare and contrast some of the features between the Mac and the Linux systems as well. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, revelations?
So you said we were supposed to do one more today. Unfortunately, we might not get to that. So does that mean we're gonna have more tomorrow? Or like, what's going on with that?
No, I would never, ever take away from your test time. I wouldn't want to deprive you of that experience. So with us just doing the 2 today, I did want to try to, like, each day try to get a little bit of async time in. I mean, if you guys want, we can go through that last one now. Or would you rather do async time?
No, I'm good.
See if we can get a poll
Go
from
async.
DW up.
Okay, how important
No.
is it? All right, like how many slides is it?
Hey,
like
let's stop
30.
asking. Let it go. Please let
I
it
want
go.
I want to see first. Because if it's 20 slides or if it's 15, I can do it.
No,
Like, I
it's,
can
it's,
delete
it's
I'm
like 30 to
concerned
35.
So
It's longer than the one we
so
just did. So
you would rather do slides instead of catch up on work? Is that
Well,
what-
it correlates
I'm-
to the work. you know, because if you
I'd
know,
rather do the
Hold on.
async.
Francis,
Just
thoughts?
riff of
I'm just concerned of when it will be fit in. That's all. Like, is it better now, or are we gonna be crammed later? This is my question.
Well, I think after today, we only have, I think only one more day where we have 3 T sessions in a day, and they're 3 light ones.
Yeah, so let's save it for another day.
So this week was a little heavy on the 3 a days. I usually don't like to do it, but again, we lost a day, so I had to make up a little ground. So I will try to fit it in another day and not try to overwhelm you.
maybe it's for the best. Unfortunately, I was with Francis, but
Yeah, this is new information.
I'm just like, okay, it's the last test I just kind of did okay with. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, but the thing is you got to not take this time for granted. I mean, if you're just like, "Ooh, I need a brain break. I'm going to go sit down and just chill and listen to music." Not a real good use of this time, because we really got to use this time to get caught up, get ahead, you know, get the stuff knocked out. So we try to build it in where we can. So, but with that, I'll stop sharing. I won't take up any more of y'all's time.